And the problem with any case, dealing with things like morality from a supernatural perspective, here's the argument you often hear. Humans are moral beings, animals aren't. Where did we get this moral sense? Through the ultimate moral being, God. Without God, the highest of higher moral authorities, then there'd be no knowledge of good and evil, and anything goes. One way around this, there's several ways, is what I call the myth of pure evil and the myth of pure good. I have a whole section on this in the book. I actually claim that good and evil don't exist. It is pure good and pure evil in a metaphorical sense, in the sense that there's like some evil homunculus in somebody's brain that makes them really bad, or on the other side, that Mother Teresa has some really good angel homunculus in her brain or something like that. Good and evil are great words as adjectives. They describe behavior and thoughts, but mostly behavior we're concerned about. So if we look at something like this, and you hear the rhetoric of our current administration that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and so on are evil. They're the embodiment of evil. Why? Why do they do this? Because they hate us. Well, but why? Because they hate freedom and liberty and they hate life. Well, that's not true. That's not, in any case, even if whether it's true or not, it doesn't get us any closer to a scientific understanding of the cause of these events. And so until we remove the supernatural element and just say, well, these are people that are motivated by different things, so let's see if we can understand the cause of those things. Same thing with the Holocaust, before 9/11, the embodiment of pure evil, Hitler and Himmler and the burning of bodies outside Krima 5 there on the right at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Thankfully, the Holocaust literature and Holocaust community that studies this is getting past this supernatural thing. For a long time, you'd read these books that Hitler is simply inexplicable. He not only is he unexplainable, he is not to be explained, because pure evil cannot be explained. With that attitude, we'll never prevent these kinds of things from happening. So, anyway, that's my justification of a scientific perspective on this. So if it wasn't a supernatural explanation, then what's the natural explanation for morality? Where did it come from? So we start with the first evolutionary ethicist, Charles Darwin. I actually argue, using a Darwinian perspective, that the moral sense, and here I mean when they used to use in the 18th century the sentiments, the moral sentiments, the feelings, the emotions, the feeling of doing good in the form of positive emotions, such as righteousness and pride, evolved out of behaviors that were reinforced as being good, either for the individual or the group. In the immoral sense, the feelings of being bad, shame and guilt and embarrassment, these are emotions, they're feelings that evolved out of behaviors reinforced as good, bad for the group or the individual. So this is important. Yes, it's true that morals vary across cultures, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm after a deeper level. The cultures may vary on which behaviors are defined as good or bad, but the feeling of doing good or bad, whatever the behavior is, that's what evolved at this deeper level. So we begin with the first of all moral principles, reciprocity. And I begin with a favorite episode of The Honeymooners. In this particular episode, the two couples have moved in together to share costs on rent. And so they're sitting down for their first dinner. And Ralph notices that when Trixie put two potatoes on the table, one big one and one small one, and he's talking to Norton, you immediately took the big one without asking what I wanted. So Norton says, well, what would you have done? Ralph says, well, I would have taken the small one, of course. Norton says, you would? And he says, yes, I would. So what are you complaining about? You got the small one. You can see the sense of justice and injustice, fairness and unfairness in lots of primate species, in fact. They have a really good sense, as do children, of when they've been cut out, even as something as simple as food, which one got the bigger slice of the cake, so to speak. We were designed to do that. And in fact, that is really the basis of the golden rule. Reciprocity is the whole idea of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, or don't do unto others as you don't want them not to do unto, with the triple negatives. Here's just a few, you can't read these, it doesn't matter. These are just a few of the versions of the golden rule that I dug out historically to show that it's really quite a universal concept. It is really the first thing anybody ever wrote down as a first principle of morals, of how you should treat other people. That led me to looking at human universals in general. So I have a whole appendix in the book and a discussion and narrative portion from Don Brown's book, Human Universals. This is a terrific book. It's a list of 373 behavioral characteristics common to all people everywhere on the planet. Usually when you take anthropology, you usually hear about one or two. There's actually lots of them. So I went through his list and I culled out the ones I thought were kind of related to the golden rule: cooperation, cooperative labor, gestures and signs of recognition, acknowledgement of gifts, things like that. Then I went through and looked at the ones related to morality in general, such as attachment and crying and empathy. Incest between mother and son is unthinkable or taboo, the one we always learn about. These are, again, these deeper emotions related to what we would call the moral sentiments. And here's a bunch of others just related to controlling behavior, bad behavior, good behavior, reinforcing, and so on. Don't worry about reading the list. The point is that there's a lot of these that are common to everybody, which I need to establish to show that it's a universal thing, that these are an evolved trait, not just a purely cultural learned thing. But why? Why would emotions evolve like this? So let's take something less complex and less controversial than morality and the moral feelings. Let's talk about something simple like the feeling of being hungry. When you are depleted of energy, you don't compute caloric input-output ratios, although I guess Weight Watchers would have you do that, which is probably a good idea, but that's not the normal thing. You just feel hungry. That feeling is an evolved biological hunger sentiment that triggers eating behavior. Similarly, when you need to procreate to pass on our genes into the next generation, we don't calculate the genetic potential of our sexual partner. We don't actually compute that waist-to-hip ratio that evolutionary psychologists like to study. You just feel horny and you seek out a partner you find attractive. This sexual urge, the undeniably powerful feeling of wanting to have sex, is an evolved sexual sentiment that triggers sexual behavior. So when theists ask me, well, if there's no God, why should you be moral? To me, this is asking like, why should you be hungry? Why should you be horny? I don't know, I just am. I just woke up this morning and I was hungry, or whatever. So for that matter, why should you ask, again, on the deeper level, why should you be jealous? Why fall in love? Why did you fall in love? I don't know, it just happened. Why are you jealous? Well, because it's just this deep feeling I have. Same thing with the moral sense. And as long as we're approaching morality unscientifically or without evolutionary theory, we'll never get deeper than the how. It's called the proximate level of analysis, just a sort of shallow, immediate causal level, because of the way what you ate yesterday or whatever. But why? Why? With evolutionary theory, we can go deeper. We can go to the why. So let's do that. Let's look at, for example, here we are traveling in a town most of us don't live in, and maybe you'll go to a restaurant. Well, you'll never see the server again. Why tip that person? This is actually a little thought experiment that evolutionary psychologists play with. Well, maybe you're with somebody and you want to impress them. Oh, look, I'm a big tipper, okay? Because this makes you raises you in status, something like that. But what if you're alone? Well, evolutionary, or I should say ethical egoism, the theory of ethical egoism, states that, like Ayn Rand's objectivism, they would say that I leave a tip because it makes me feel good. That is, it's not an altruistic thing. I'm not doing it for this other person. I'm not doing it to impress anybody. I'm not doing it for this other person. I'm doing it for me because I'm selfish, because it makes me feel good. Whether that's right or not, what I want to know is, why does it make you feel good? That's what I'm after with an evolutionary analysis. What does it mean to feel good about an act? Why would those neurons in your brain fire that send that signal to that part of the hypothalamus that feels good? Why is that? That's an evolved moral sense.